I hope the Kiev airport will open soon. Then it will be easier to fly in.
Yes, I think that the war will end and President Trump may be the first leader to travel here by airplane. I think it would be symbolic by airplane.
Again, January 25th, around that date, right? Flying in, meeting the Air Force One.
That would be cool.
I don't know how I feel about. I would have to maybe look at more Zelenskyy interviews, or maybe I just haven't seen it. I feel like Zelensky's English is fine. My mom drilled this into me when I was younger. I don't know why. Maybe it's not true. Maybe it is. I don't know. But like, anytime we would travel somewhere and people who were clearly fluent in Spanish but were speaking English to her, my mom would always respond in English, and I would always ask my mom, I was like, why not just like speak to them in Spanish, since that's clearly like their native tongue and you can both just speak Spanish? Why have them struggle in English? My mom would always say, if somebody's trying to speak to me in English, if they're making the effort to speak to me in English, switching over to Spanish is basically saying like, F you, your English is dog. Like, just talk to me in your native tongue. I don't want to waste time with you. So if somebody's going to go through the trouble of trying to speak in English to her, she'll always respond. I don't know if that's like a normal or that's how everybody thinks about it, but the idea of like, I'm going to talk to you in another language because I don't know that. I just don't understand the choice here, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think of the other form of rent control where only rent increases are limited on a year-by-year basis? I think all rent control is dog shit. I have no positive opinions of any rent control. It's kicking the can down the road in a really stupid way. It externally fucks with your market a lot. I just think it's really stupid. But
I hope the Kiev airport will open soon. Then it will be easier to fly in.
Yes, I think that the war will end and President Trump may be the first leader to travel here by airplane. I think it would be symbolic by airplane.
Again, January 25th, around that date, right? Flying in, meeting the Air Force One.
That would be cool.
There is a perception of corruption. People like Donald Trump and Elon Musk really care about fighting corruption.
Why is he even bringing up Elon here? What? Okay.
January 25th, around that date, right? Flying in, meeting the Air Force One.
That would be cool.
There is a perception of corruption. People like Donald Trump and Elon Musk really care about fighting corruption. What can you say to them to gain their trust that the money is going towards this fight for freedom, towards the war effort?
In most cases, we did not receive money, we received weapons. And where we saw risks that something could be a weapon, we would slap everyone on the wrist. And believe me, this is not only about Ukraine. On the supply chain, everywhere, there are some or other people and companies who want to make money because everyone makes money on the war. We did not profit from the war. If we found someone, believe me, we slapped everyone on the wrist. And we did that, and we will continue to do so because to this day, when someone says that Ukraine was selling weapons, and by the way, Russia was the one pushing this narrative, we always responded. Our soldiers would kill such people with their own hands without any trial. Do you honestly think anyone could steal weapons by the truckload when we ourselves don't have enough on the front lines? And yet we have to provide proof to defend ourselves. Because when there's an abundance of such misinformation, distrust starts to grow. And you're right, people listen to various media outlets, see this, and lose faith in you. In the end, you lose trust. And with it, you lose support. Therefore, believe me, we are fighting more against disinformation than against particular cases. Although I still emphasize once again, at the everyday level, such things are still important. We catch these people and we fight them. As if Putin wants to sit down and talk, but Ukraine does not. This is not true.
I think that, yes, he is in fact ready to talk.
Did you talk to him?
On the phone or what?
How do you normally talk to him?
I don't know. Normally by the sea. The same as with you. He invites you to the sea with me. The following is a conversation with Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine. It was an intense, raw, and heartfelt conversation, my goal for which was to understand and to do all I can to push for peace. Please allow me to say a few words, first about language, then about the president, and finally about history. Please skip ahead straight to our conversation if you like. We spoke in a mix of languages, continuously switching from Ukrainian to Russian to English. So the interpreter was barely hanging on. It was indeed, in many ways, a wild ride of a conversation. As the president said, the first of many. Language, like many other things in a time of war, is a big deal. We had a choice, speak in Russian, Ukrainian, or English. The president does speak some English, but he's far from fluent in it, and I sadly don't speak Ukrainian, yet. So Russian is the only common language we're both fluent in. In case you don't know, the Russian language is one that the president speaks fluently and was his primary language for most of his life. It's the language the Russian language is yet. So Russian is the only common, he's far from fluent in it, and I sadly don't speak Ukrainian or English. The president does speak some English, but he's far from fluent in it, and I sadly don't speak Ukrainian, yet. So Russian is the only common language we're both fluent in. In case you don't know, the Russian language is one that the president speaks fluently and was his primary language for most of his life. It's the language I also speak fluently, to the degree I speak any language fluently, as does a large fraction of the Ukrainian population. So the most dynamic and powerful conversation between us would be in Russian, without an interpreter, who in this case added about 2 to 3 second delay, and frankly, translated partially and poorly, for me at least, taking away my ability to feel the humor, the wit, the brilliance, the pain, the anger, the humanity of the person sitting before me, that I could clearly feel when he was speaking fluently in the language I understand, Russian. But all that said, war changes everything. The Ukrainian language has become a symbol of the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom and independence. So we had a difficult choice of 3 languages. And faced with that choice, we said yes to all 3, to the consternation and dismay of the translators. We make captions and voice-over audio tracks available in English, Ukrainian, and Russian. So you can listen either to a version that is all one language or to the original mixed language version with subtitles in your preferred language. The default is English overdub. On YouTube, you can switch between language audio tracks by clicking the settings gear icon, then clicking audio track, and then selecting the language you prefer, English, Ukrainian, Russian. To listen to the original mixed language version, please select the English UK audio track. Big thank you to 11 Labs for their help with overdubbing using a mix of AI and humans. We will continue to explore how to break down the barriers that language creates, with AI and otherwise. This is a difficult but important endeavor. Language, after all, is much more than a cold sequence of facts and logic statements. There are words, when spoken in the right sequence and at the right time, that can shake the world and turn the tides of history, that can start and end wars. Great leaders can find those words, and great translators can help these words reverberate to the outskirts of a divided civilization. On another note, let me say that President Zelenskyy is a truly remarkable person and a historic figure. I say this as somebody who deeply understands the geopolitical complexity and history of the region. I am from this region. My parents were both born in Ukraine, Kiev and Kharkiv, both my grandfathers too. I was born in Tajikistan and lived for a time there, then in Kiev, then Moscow, then United States. And while I am now, for almost 30 years, and to the day I die, I am a proud American. My family roots grow deep in the soil of nations that comprised the Soviet Union, including Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and Tajikistan. I've gotten to know and have spoken for hours with members of the president's team and people close to him. I spoke to hundreds of Ukrainians since 2022, including soldiers, civilians, politicians, artists, religious leaders, journalists, economists, historians, and technologists. I've listened to hundreds of hours of programs that both support and criticize the president in Ukraine, in Russia, in the United States. I've read countless books about this war and the long arc of history that led up to it. If forced to recommend 2, at this moment, I would say The Russo-Ukrainian War by Serhiy Plokhy and The Showman by Simon Schuster, which is a good personal behind-the-scenes biography of the president, focused on 2022. But there are many, many more. This is why I can comfortably say that he is a truly singular and remarkable human being. It was an honor and pleasure to talk with him on and off the mic. Now, it is true that I plan to travel to Moscow and to speak with President Vladimir Putin. And I hope to be back in Kiev as well. As President Zelenskyy said, this was our first of many more meetings. In all these cases, I seek to do my small part in pushing for peace. And in doing all this, I'm deeply grateful for the trust people have given me on all sides. For the people attacking me, sometimes lying about me, for the critics in the stands, chanting the latest slogans of the mass hysteria machine like the sheep and animal farm. I love you too. And I assure you that drawing lines between good and evil on a world map is much easier than seeing that line between good and evil in every human being, including you and me. This is what I try to do. I'm simply a human being who seeks to find and surface the humanity in others. And as I've said, no amount of money, fame, power, access can buy my opinion or my integrity. Now, finally, please allow me to briefly overview some history to give background for several topics that President Zelenskyy references in this conversation. I recommend my conversation with Serhiy Plokhy and many others about the history of the region. But here, let me start with 1991, when Ukraine declared its independence and the Soviet Union collapsed. From this point on, Russia-Ukraine relations were defined in large part by whether Ukraine aligned more with Russia or with the West, meaning Europe, United States, NATO, and so on. In 2004, with the Orange Revolution, a pro-Western candidate, Viktor Yushchenko, became president. In 2010, it went the other way. A pro-Russia candidate, Viktor Yanukovych, became president. The internal tensions grew, and in 2013, Euromaidan protests broke out over Yanukovych's decision to suspend talks with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia. This set forward a chain of important events in 2014. On the politics front, Yanukovych was ousted and fled to Russia, leading to the election of a pro-Western president. Also, in 2014, on the war front, Russia annexed Crimea and war broke out in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, which eventually killed over 14,000 people and continued all the way to 2022, when, on February 24th, 2022, Russian forces initiated a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This is when the world started to really pay attention. Now, some history of peace talks. Volodymyr Zelenskyy won the presidency in 2019, and he discusses in this conversation the ceasefire agreements he made with Vladimir Putin in 2019, which was one of many attempts at peace, from the two Minsk agreements in 2014 and 15 to a series of ceasefire agreements in 2018, 19, and 20, all of which failed, in part or in whole. All this shows just how difficult ceasefire and peace negotiations are, but they are not impossible. It is always worth trying, over and over again, to find the path to peace. I believe that Presidents Zelenskyy, Putin, and Trump should meet soon after January 20th this year and give everything they got to negotiate a ceasefire and security guarantees that pave the way for a long-lasting peace. We discussed several ideas for this in this conversation. As I said, this was one of my main goals here, to push for peace. This trip to Kyiv and this conversation was a truly special moment for me in my life. It is one I will never forget. So to reflect, I say a few more words and answer some questions at the very end if you like to listen. But here, let me say thank you to everyone for your support over the years. It means the world. This is the Lex Fridman podcast. And now, dear friends, here's the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Если мы можем объяснить, почему украинский язык очень важен, я вам гарантирую, получится очень хорошо, если мы на русском.
Прекрасно я владею русским языком, конечно же. Я все понимаю, о чем вы говорите. Да, но я не могу все интервью отвечать вам по-русски. Это по поводу того, что... Это вот как сегодня. Ничего не выдумываю. Вы же сегодня все видите. Это и чувствуете, и слышите. Сегодня было 73 удара ракетами по нам. Убиты люди. Сегодня было больше 100 дронов. Так, и это же ежедневная история. Бьют люди, которые говорят по-русски. Бьют по людям, которым еще недавно рассказывали, что они на самом деле защищают русскоязычных. И поэтому я не уважаю ни руководителя или директора сегодняшней России, не этот народ, я просто... Вот и все.
Just as a heads up, hold on, I'm trying to think how much patience I have today. I'm just going to ban anybody that complains about how we're watching it. This is so fucking annoying. I already don't give a fuck about this video now. Everybody is fucking crying about whether it should be dubbed or subbed or what the fuck else. I don't know what you want. We're doing a poll. I'm setting it to one thing, and if you complain after that, I'm just permabanning you. You'll be unbanned in 2026. Holy fucking AIDS. Jesus Christ. Fuck, I knew this was going to be the outcome too. I should have never switched it. Okay. If you complain, you're just getting banned, okay? Jesus fuck.
And I don't think that you can just pretend that nothing's happening and give Putin a pass once again for saying that we are one people, that we speak one language, etc. They speak the language of weapons. That is a fact. And we are peaceful people who want to protect themselves and defend their freedom and their human choice. You know, at the beginning of the war, I addressed Russians in Russian. Zero effect. They're mute. They do not listen. They did not listen. Some are afraid. Some have other issues. They have different reasons. It's like when a person is drowning, and people walk by because they can't hear them. And someone walks on by crying, afraid to save them. It doesn't change anything for the one drowning. They need someone to help them. This is why I honestly despise these people, as they are deaf. They began the occupation in the supposed defense of the Russian language. And that's why, with all due respect, I would like to give an interview in Ukrainian. This is very important to me. If there are some points that you want me to explain in Russian, I can certainly do that. I can certainly occasionally speak Russian. But in general, no. I'm not sure that you will understand me completely, despite your Ukrainian roots. You are a citizen of the United States, right?
Yes.
That's why I'm surprised that you don't understand. Well, it was a long time ago. I understand that it was a long time ago. Moreover, a lot has changed. A lot has changed.
If I may please allow me to say this in Russian. Yes, many things have changed, but I have hope. I hope that today many Russians will hear this, that Vladimir Putin will hear this, that the American president, Donald Trump, and the American people will hear this, that everyone will hear this. And yes, Ukrainian language is important symbolically, but what is also important is that we understand each other well.
For Donald Trump, Is it important for Donald
Yes.
Trump whether I speak Russian
Yes.
or not?
Yes. Because unfortunately, and it hurts to admit, but I cannot speak or understand Ukrainian yet. So your wit, dynamism, and your humanity will not come through as well and as quickly. Remember, I need to wait for 2 to 3 seconds to hear it. You have a great sense of humor.
Oh. Wait, I'm so confused. So is Zelensky speaking in Russian right now, and then is Lex getting a live translation of it? So what was the point of, or is he speaking in Ukrainian? It's mixed. Okay. This is fucking retarded. Okay.
Many things have changed, but I have hope. I hope that... But
Russian
yes,
or not?
Yes. Because unfortunately, and it hurts to admit, but I cannot speak or understand Ukrainian yet. So your wit, dynamism, and your humanity will not come through as well and as quickly. Remember, I need to wait for 2 to 3 seconds to hear it. You have a great sense of humor, great stories. With an interpreter translating, I simply won't see this, but I understand that it's painful. Another reason is that I hoped we could show that even though it is sometimes said that Russian is banned in Ukraine,
This is not true. I'm speaking Russian now, right? We have people who speak Russian. This is not true, really. It's not. It's really not.
even though it is sometimes said that Russian is banned in Ukraine,
This is not true.
The Lex has not read a single full book on the history of Russia and Ukraine. I don't know why he would lie and say he's read countless books and then just repeat like the most baseline Twitter talking points, but whatever.
I'm speaking Russian now, right? We have people who speak Russian. This is not true, really. It's not. It's really not true. We disrespect Russian now because of Russians. That's all. When they were saving Russian speakers, they killed Russian speakers, many people who actually, many of whom are in the East, right? In the East, they lived in the East. They destroyed their houses, destroyed their lives. It's not a rhetorical thing. It's not all talk and blah, blah, blah. I don't have time for blah, blah, blah. Yes, so it's a very, very important and sensitive moment. The message is that we are not one nation. We are not, the same country. We're different countries. Yes, different countries. And I think what is most important is what we're talking about. Not how. We're speaking about it. This is what I think. You're a smart guy. So you have a lot of experience in dialogue of this kind. That's why I think you will understand me. Yeah. Anyway, I think it is far better for Donald Trump to hear my English, not my Russian.
your English is much better than my Ukrainian. You're getting better and better
That's
every
true. I'm a very honest guy. That's why I will be very honest with you.
Okay.
Your Ukrainian is not very good, but we will work on it.
Yes, I have many flaws. That's one of them.
Sometimes I can speak English. Sometimes, as I understand, we can be very flexible, right?
Very flexible. Spanish, Swahili.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah,
We are
Javier
very
Malay needs to
flexible.
understand us. So
By the way, Javier understood me without any words
the language of love, maybe
of respect. I
respect.
respect him. I had a very good conversation with him. Really brilliant.
May I sometimes speak Russian and sometimes English?
Yes. You can use any language you like. And I think that's a very good rule for this first meeting between us. As you said, maybe we will meet in the future for the second time.
Second and third and fourth.
Yeah, this is good. You can ask questions in the language you'd like, and I will answer in the language I can.
Well, you said you wanted to meet by the sea at some point. So for our next meeting, let's meet by the sea.
With pleasure. Next time, it would be much better to meet by our Ukrainian Black or our Azov Sea.
You know, I've been to I have traveled to many cities in Ukraine, but I have never been to Odessa. And everyone tells me that, and I don't know why.
You have to.
Can you explain to me why everyone loves Odessa so much? What's there?
You know, what's in Odessa? That's how they say it. What's there? In Odessa, we've got it all.
Okay.
Odessa, I love Odessa because of its particular temperament. People have their own accent, and there are many nationalities, you know, there are a lot of stories. Authentic Odessa cuisine. By the way, you know, the cuisine is very different from others. The dishes are
Why are they still using AI when they're speaking English, Lameo? My guess is they probably just like pushed a button to like AI translate the entire thing, and they didn't go through and to actually choose like parts to do it or not, I guess.
not like any other dishes, and everything is very tasty. Also, there are beautiful people. And today, you know, you understand people very well, especially after the attacks on Odessa. You understand what the people are like, just how Odessites are, very Ukrainian. And that's very cool. I love Odessa. I go there several times a year. I go there several times a year now because, now because of strengthening of air defense systems, because of this grain corridor, etc. I go there more often. They have the sun there. They have the sea. It's Ukraine and it's very cool there.
Well, when you come and visit me in Texas as a guest for the third time,
With pleasure.
let's do this. How about you, my friend Joe Rogan, and I will go get some Texas barbecue together?
Who will pay?
That's a good question.
Putin. For everything. He has
Well-
to pay.
Well, yes, we'll invite him too.
No.
Okay.
Without him.
Okay, I get it. Understood.
But if the Rome Statute will be accepted by your government before this moment,
By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Joe has a great comedy club in Austin.
Joe Rogan,
Joe Rogan, yes. And I think that
Did he even understand that joke? I think the joke there was, did I understand this joke?
together.
who will pay?
It's a good question.
Putin. For everything. He has
Well-
to pay.
Well, yes, we'll invite him too.
No.
Okay.
Without him.
Okay, I get it. Understood.
But if the Rome Statute,
Everyone did. Wait, hold on one second. Wait, don't say anything. Wait.
will be accepted by your government before this moment,
Okay. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Joe has a great comedy club in Austin.
Joe Rogan,
Joe Rogan, yes. And I think that as a person who respects comedy and stand-up comedy, it would be interesting for you to have a look at it.
no, he is, I know him, and I saw a lot of different videos. He's a very talented person. So it would be a pleasure if you invite me and I'm able to do it. I am a little bit busy,
Yeah.
but if I'll be in the United States, I hope that I will have a conversation and a meeting with President Trump. And of course, during my visit, if I'll have the time, it would be a pleasure if you'll invite me. With pleasure.
You know what? I will pay.
Good.
Yeah. I had to think about it, but you are the president.
Yes, with you, with pleasure.
When the war is over, please come.
Thanks so
and when
much.
we're less busy.
Thanks so much.
If we can go back many years, World War II. Tell me the story of your grandfather who fought in World War II.
My grandfather, he graduated from the military academy. And from the very beginning of the war, he went to fight. He was in the infantry and he fought through the entire war. He had many wounds. As they used to say back then, his chest is covered in medals. And it's true. He had more than 30. Yes, more than 30. He was the kind of man. He was such a serious man. I loved him very much. And we had a very close relationship. He didn't like to tell details about the war. He never boasted. Although I asked him, as a boy would, how many fascists did you kill? He never talked about it. He believed that the war was a great tragedy, a tragedy for everyone. And Ukraine was occupied, and it was a tragedy for Ukraine, a tragedy for Europe, and a tragedy for the Jewish people. His own brothers, his entire family were executed. They were tortured.
Why do these conspiracy podcasters think they can fix global issues just by having them on a podcast only conservatives listen to? Like, does Lex think they're going to have a conversation that has never been had before? I don't know. We'll see all the misinformation talking points they get into here. I'm curious how Lex will engage, or he probably just, I don't know. I don't know what these people think about. Do they even see their audience? Like, I see like the most upvoted comment in here. It's always like a reframing of everything. Like, we sent $200 billion to Ukraine. No, we didn't. We sent like, what was it, like 30 billion and then weapons. Huh. Did you catch that? Our money isn't going to Ukraine. It's going straight to American weapons manufacturers. Like, oh, okay, my bad. Yeah, there you go.
by fascists who had occupied Ukraine and their village. His father was the head of the village, and he was killed. They were shot. It was a mass grave, right? Yes, it was a communal burial. Some of them were killed outright, and others were buried alive. His 4 brothers,
Oh man, my patience for autism is really low today. I thought it was also negative, but that comment chain seems to take it as a good thing that the money is staying in our economy. That's fine. There is no single person on the history of the internet that's ever said going straight to American weapons manufacturers and meant that to be positive. If you think that, please, just you're so fucking autistic. I don't know what to say. Maybe some people in this comment are like, oh, at least it's American jobs, whatever. But this was obviously supposed to be a negative fucking, it's supposed to be a negative fucking comment. Maybe it wasn't taken that way, but obviously
they all went to war. As soon as the war began, they were
Unless we dox this guy and he's literally like a fucking sea-level Raytheon, okay, fucking exec.
there. He was the only one who had a military education, and they all died in the war. He was the only one who came back. He had nobody. He came back and he found my grandmother, his future wife, and she managed, what was it called then? I don't know, they don't have them anymore. It was a childcare facility, an orphanage, so to speak, a place where orphans lived, children who don't have parents, children of war. And she managed this childcare facility with difficult children, as they used to call them, difficult children who went through the war, who saw their parents killed, and this is how they met, because these difficult children, they, sometimes behave differently. They could steal something, do something bad. There were many children in the orphanage. Yes, that's how she met my grandfather. And I loved him very much. And I think that my grandfather, frankly, would never have believed that this war is possible. He would never have believed it. Because he worked in the police after the war. He was a colonel. He worked in criminal investigation all his life. So he fought with bandits all his life after the Second World War. But also, I believe he fought for justice all his life. And we all lived in one apartment. And even after his death, I lived with both of my grandmothers and my parents, 2 grandmothers, who both lost their husbands.
How did you have 2 grandmas? Were they lesbians?
Both of them died. Well, it was an ordinary family that lived like everyone lived back then in the Soviet Union. And even after the Soviets, in the 90s, we lived in one apartment all together. What else is there to say? But I think the most important thing was values, respect. They gave me an education. My parents gave me an education. No one left me money or apartments, so I didn't inherit anything material. But I believe that our real inheritance is here, in our minds and in our hearts. I believe that.
There's 1 second delay. So if, I'm sorry, if you...
It's in our minds and in our hearts. I believe that.
There's 1 second delay. So if, I'm sorry, if you
It's fine.
tell a joke, I will laugh about 1, 2, or 3 seconds later. There's a delay. So, ordinary family, but not an ordinary time, World War II. World War II. Speaking of mass graves, I was at Babin Yar yesterday. A large part of my family died there. In moments like this, such a place serves as a stark reminder of the profound historical gravity of the Second World War. I remember this song from my youth. On June 22nd at 4 o'clock, Kyiv was bombed and the war began. I always wondered how it would feel to live in a moment when everything changed. The path of humanity completely shifts in a single moment, just like that. What do you think about that moment in 1941? Now, after the 2022 invasion, how do you perceive the Second World War after you have witnessed all of it?
Well, firstly, the war actually started earlier. It started here in Ukraine. Kyiv was bombed, as you quoted. But the war had already begun before that. And I think I perceived it as a start of the full-scale invasion. Well, I think it's hard. It's hard to understand why nobody wants to listen, look at, and analyze history. War, the rise of fascism and Nazism, the emergence of Hitler, Goebbels, and their entire team. At the time, this wasn't just about one party or even one country. It was essentially a wave of hatred, a wave of one race above the rest. They were, in fact, constructing and ultimately implemented a theory around this idea, later seizing Europe. They created a theory of one nation, one race, one world. Their world. Of course, this idea is absolutely senseless, but it has become radicalized over the years and even gained support. A vision of one world. And in principle, the so-called Russian world, the ideology Putin promotes and imposes, it wasn't originally like that. He was a different person back then, or maybe he was always like this, but his rhetoric was different. At the beginning, remember, he talked about the EU and even about Russia's future being tied to NATO. There were even talks of joining the European Union, NATO. He spoke about shared values with the West. That's how it all sounded back then. And we must also look at Hitler, who was seriously, before the radical idea of taking over the whole world, he actually made certain steps, and everyone believed he was helping the economy. And to be fair, he did take some steps in that direction. But he was a terrifying person. None of those actions justify him, nor do they excuse his actions. And that's why we cannot look at the Second World War as if it started in 1939. It didn't begin in 1941 either. We need to draw conclusions. When did it start? With the weaknesses of the world. The division of European states, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. All of this happened before 1941. People who were more informed, those who dug deeper, whether they were politicians or not, whether they were from different walks of life, including business, which was different back then, were speaking about all of this. Hitler won't stop. There'll be a world war. Hitler will destroy nations. Nations. And that's what happened. Someone looked the other way. What I told you about. Europe was sinking then. I gave you an example of it. But the whole world looked the other way and didn't pay attention and said, no, we can negotiate with him. I'm telling you, he is okay. We can negotiate with him. He's just more right-leaning. Or it does not matter what they said. He's just very pro-nationalist. This is all nonsense. And this is not the first time. And Hitler isn't the first such case in history. We're dealing with a person who is allowed to stick to this desire to destroy. He was consumed by it and enjoying it. And what happened to Hitler? Now, what about Putin? This invasion was also at 4 a.m. Around 4 a.m, there were missile strikes on Ukraine. This is the same. I believe that intentions are also the same, but more on that later. By the way, you tell me if this is too long, you can stop me.
Never long enough. It's beautiful.
Okay, so it happened here around 4 a.m. Before this, I must honestly say, everyone said something, predicted something, etc., but I asked only for one thing, primarily from the United States. If you are sure, if you have the evidence, if you talk to him and he tells you that there'll be an invasion, if all this scares you. I only asked for two things. Send us weapons, or better yet, strengthen us with preventive measures so there would be no war. It wasn't the weapons that I was asking for. I asked for sanctions. Intimidate him. Please don't say that. If he comes, if he crosses borders, if he kills, we're imposing sanctions. Well, this is complete bullshit. Sorry, but really?
Oh, I understand this.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
I understood one word.
Yeah.
So they did not help.
I believe that no, and this is a fact. We didn't receive help. If we assume that words are help, well, then yes, we received a lot of it because there were plenty of words. Even more than plenty, yes? At 4 a.m, there were strikes. Morally, is it possible to prepare for war? No. It doesn't happen like you read in books, see in movies, and so on. what happens to you? I was just looking at my wife and children. My children were asleep, but my wife was awake. There were strikes, missile strikes. We heard them. To you, as a living person, how can this be? You just can't fully believe this. You just don't understand. Why now? Given everything that happened in World War II, when millions of people died, none of it mattered. Still at 4 in the morning, around 4, 3:40, 3:45, remember? Around this time, yes, there were missile strikes. And later, by the way, a few days after the first days of the war, I spoke with Lukashenko on the phone. And he apologized. And he said that it was not me. Missiles were launched from my territory, and Putin was the one launching them. These are his words. I have witnesses. And I apologize, he said. But believe me, that's what he told me. Volodya, this is not me. I'm not in charge, he told me. I'm not in charge. These are just missiles. This is Putin. I told him, don't do that. This was done without me. That's it. He just, on the phone, I remember this conversation. I told him that I believed. I told him, you are a murderer too, I'm just saying. And he told me, you must understand, you can't fight the Russians. I told him that we never fought them. I said, it's war. The missiles came from your land, from Belarus. How did you allow this? Then he replied, all right, retaliate then. I still remember him telling me, hit the refinery. You know how much I care about it. Moser Oil Refinery, is that it? Can't recall. Moser Oil Refinery. I told him, what are you on about? What retaliation?
Forgive me, Volodya.
Yes.
This was at 5 in the morning?
No. This was during the first or maybe the second or third day of the war. Yes.
I see.
Well, after that, I went back home. I was home with my children, with my wife. I just went to my wife very quickly that night at 4 o'clock. Yes, and just told her, get the children, get ready. You'll probably need to go to my office very soon. And I left. That's it. At this moment, you're no longer a father. What happened to me, unfortunately, because I believe that this is, and not only do I believe, I understand, especially now that all of this is the most important thing, because your country is your family. The strength is in your family. And this is the most important thing. And I'm the president, and therefore I had to stop being a father in my own family. And my wife had to do everything. She had to do everything regarding children, regarding safety. And I had to deal with the state because I'm the president. And this is my duty. And I, by the way, am taking this very seriously. I went to the office and here we are now. You're very welcome.
Well, at that moment, on February 24th, 2022, everything changed again. Just like in June 1941. Everything changed. And history took a turn. The history of humanity took a turn. And for you too. Well, you were the president. You were talking about fighting corruption, about the country's freedom, about interesting and innovative reforms. But that morning of February 22nd, everything changed. Could you tell me about that morning, the details of your actions? When you had to quickly make difficult decisions. What was the process for you? How did you make these decisions? Did you discuss them with people you trust to understand how to respond to this invasion in every technical, political, and military aspect? What was the process for you? How did you make the decision?
According to our legislation, in principle, I'm the supreme commander of the armed forces of Ukraine, so I had to give corresponding orders. Yes, I have a military office, and then later there was a military headquarters where all key people gathered. This is not only about the military, it's about energy, etc., all key things. But at that moment, I made the decisions quickly and without a doubt. And I cannot say that I am just that kind of person. I'm just a living person who believed that if help is needed right now, to help evacuate people, help with children. Several cities were blocked. I was only thinking about how to deliver food there within a day. We did a lot of things, although we understood that they, in fact, occupy part of our state. And we distributed weapons to people. That's how it was. Trucks came, and simply distributed weapons to people so that they could defend the capital, to ordinary people, just on the street, to ordinary people who understood that if the Russians entered the city, then we would have the same thing that's happening in other cities per the information we received. Thanks to digitalization, by the way, we had very good digitalization before this. We preserved a lot. And even when they were surrounding certain cities, a lot of things still worked. The banking system, the internet, we had television. And thanks to this, I made several decisions to ensure that people are united and have all the information. Russia is very good at spreading large-scale disinformation. Fortunately, I have 2 decades of experience, managing a production studio, TV channels, and large media resources. I understood that we needed to build an information network very quickly. Thanks to this, I began to address the people constantly. This happened several times, 3 to 5 times a day. In fact, I became that an information source for people who were in cities that were cut off from other information. And it was very important for me to keep all things digital, to keep the internet, to stay in touch with everyone, with all the people. Initially, that's the contact we had. And then we also built a media platform, where we had all the news agencies.
Someone said, Lex is actually such a fraud. As someone who's a fairly fluent understanding of Russian, much of the Ukrainian language is similar, and some of the phrases he asks for translation are directly translatable. He just wants to LARP. Is that true? I don't know either language, so.
Agencies of Ukraine. And this network was called Marathon. And it was also very important for the people to trust us.
One guy said no, and another guy said yes. There you go.
And people had to receive information. Why? There were waves. There were waves of Russian on the first day who said he ran away. I had to go out into the street. I left the office and went outside. I had to do this because I was showing that this was no green screen, to show that it was the street, not some digital manipulation. I mean, I did these things, then I touched various objects. Now, people might think that these are small things, but I was actually showing that I was in a real place. All of this had an impact. I was absolutely sure of my actions.
Should silverware be pointing up or down on the dishwasher? Always up.
And these contacts, several contacts. And then I spoke to the Russians. I addressed Russians. I really did. And then only after that, I gathered. It was the first day when I invited all of the journalists here, wasn't it? That was on the first day, I think. Well, not here, to the press center in this building. I talked to journalists. I asked them not to leave because we needed weapons. At that moment, they were handing out rifles to people. And for me, journalists and media platforms were essential voices. There were various journalists from different countries here, and they were essentially stuck. And I asked them for contacts, those who had access to Russians, Belarusians, Kazakhs who understood everything, the same information. And I spoke to them. And I spoke to them and spoke in.
What about knives? Should they point up too? I put them sharp sideways down so people don't get stabbed. It's a dishwasher. If you're reaching into a dishwasher to grab a knife and you can't see this pointing up, maybe you deserve to get cut up.
Russian. I told them, you must stop Putin. This is terrible. This is horror. This is war. You must stop him. And if you stand up now, if you speak out, and if you go out into the streets, this was very important. I spoke to them in Russian to show them that there was no problem and that all of these pretexts were made up. This is why it's so painful to talk about the Russian language too, because look, if the person does not want to listen, they will not listen, no matter what language we speak.
I disagree with you here. I think and hope that many people in Russia will hear us today.
They blocked YouTube recently. Are you aware of this? In their country.
I know. And I simply guarantee that this conversation will travel fast on the internet. Everyone will hear you. They will hear you. Including the president of Russia will hear you. This is why I have hope.
Just non-responsive? Did they really? They banned Russia? They banned YouTube in Russia?
He is actually deaf, even if he speaks to you. He is deaf by his very nature. Do you understand the difference? You know, for instance, when you talk to Musk, you're talking to...
I don't want to watch this. I just don't care about this. I can't watch this, bro. Oh, Jesus, fuck.
Talk to Musk. You're talking to an innovator, a scientist about rockets. You talk about how to save on costs and how they land. And on the other hand, Putin doesn't launch rockets to save money, but to kill people.
Is toxic positivity a thing? Because that's what I get from Lex in this combo. It's not like toxic positivity. Like, you can be positive. I don't think you can be toxically positive. It's just when you, sometimes it feels like people are being naively positive or obfuscating or equivocating. I think that's the issue. Yeah, I don't like, you can't just be glazing one side so fucking hard and then attacking the other side so fucking hard and then just saying like, oh, hope and love and hope and love. Okay, well, like, where's the criticisms for Putin? I never heard that Russia had blocked YouTube. I didn't even know that. Has Lex complained about that in any of his episodes? Maybe he has. I don't know.
People, do you think you can talk to Putin about technology? Your guys were interviewing him, and he told them about tribal history. Do you understand? Imagine a Russian man in his country listening to him. You know what Musk is about? Technology, Mars, artificial intelligence. And this guy, Putin, is standing there bare-assed, pontificating about tribes. You've got to understand. You think that when you do interviews, like Mr. Tucker, who did an interview there, that you're about to make them friends. How could you... What does this have to do with friends? He's different. He is simply different.
But it's still necessary.
A mammoth stands before you.
By the way, I must say that when you said bare-assed, it was not translated. Could the interpreter please translate?
This is so that you
Thank
can
you.
understand.
Now he explained everything to me. I understand.
Yeah? That's
now
great.
I fully understand.
That's
Anyway.
great.
But we still need to talk.
One should always speak with someone who listens. And you must speak when you know that this will benefit you, bring peace and calm to the world, not the other way around. I love President Trump's message when he speaks. I think that we share a position on peace through strength. That is very important. It means that if you are strong, you can speak. And we need to be strong. And Ukraine has to be strong. Strong enough. Otherwise, what for? So, you know who, like Voldemort, who must not be named. Yes, he's like Voldemort. He thrives, subsists, and lives on being subjectivized. Instead of isolation, he is offered to step out into the light. He's darkness personified, and you offer him, as it were, to be subjectivized. Why? There's only one reason. Fear. And you say, we need to talk. Listen, we need to be in a strong position and not talk, but end the war. Yes, it is possible through dialogue. We're not opposed to it. You just need to be in a strong position to make the other person want it. Do you think he wants to end the war? That's what you suggested? I think this is naive. I'm sorry. With all due respect, it's naive to think he wants to finish the war. It's...
Tell you what.
Well, I'm sorry, hold on. Why are these people saying, I have zero issue with Zelensky glazing Trump? If I was in his position, did I say something that implied I was critiquing Zelensky for glazing Trump? Well, I don't understand why 10 people just type this in chat. Is this like a standard response to some other thing you read online and you think that I said something and you're just like, is it like a bot thing or I don't understand. I don't understand. Wait, I don't even know who you're talking to here. Go to other chats. Okay.
Circumstances, sorry for interrupting. There's something we need. I think that President Trump not only has will, he has all these possibilities, and it's not just talk. I really count on him. And I think that our people really count on him. So he has enough power to pressure him, to pressure Putin, not into wanting to stop it. No, he will not want to pressure him to actually stop it. That is the difference. Don't rely on his will, Putin's will to stop. You won't see it. That's what I think. Sorry.
No, sorry, I interrupted you first. But what I would want, I do have what some might call a naive dream of you sitting down with Putin and Trump and negotiating a deal about.
Are we going to get any substantive like engagement on anything, or like is this going to be like what I worried I had this like fear that when I went to debate Finkelstein, that Finkelstein and Rabbani would be bringing up all these like really deep historical events and I wouldn't know anything, and I would just have to like appeal to like very broad, vague things because I just wouldn't be able to keep up in the convo. That was like my fear. Is this just going to be like Zelenskyy saying something particularized and something specific to Putin or a specific criticism, and then Lex responding broadly with hope and love every single time? Is that what this whole thing is going to be? Like, is there going to be a single... Remember, this guy's read tons and tons and tons of books. Countless books, he said, countless. Countless books. There should be a plethora of deep, deep history that one could draw from to make, even in recent history, in terms of Ukrainian-Russian relations, post-91, pre-91. Okay, let's see.
Might call a naive dream of you sitting down with Putin and Trump and negotiating a deal about a ceasefire and together finding a path to long-term peace. And I think this requires strength, requires negotiations. There are a lot of carrots and sticks here that can be used to make a real deal. And Trump is very keen on making a deal and ready to negotiate.
Can I ask you a question?
What kind of deal? What kind of sticks? What kind of carrots? This is probably like, how many hours through this interview until Zelenskyy is like, I thought the first days of the war were the scariest, the hardest days of my life, but it's actually enduring this. It's actually not losing my shit in this conversation right here. Like what? It's okay. 53 minutes. Okay. Maybe we'll get to somewhere.
Yep. I just really want you and I to be on the same page.
Yes. What is it going to be? Criticisms of like, can we please stop just saying peace and love for Putin, please?
It's very important to be in the same information space.
Yes.
Extremely important.
Not living different alternate realities. Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about the ceasefire.
Okay. Specifics.
Let me describe the situation to you.
Okay.
In December 2019, in Normandy, in Paris.
It's a conversation. This is why you don't want to watch it, because all you want to see is them debate shit. No, you shit for brains fucking retard. What I want to see is a substantive conversation, and I just want to see it. But I understand now what you're saying. Nobody actually wants to see it. You just want to see fucking Down syndrome slop is what all of these podcasts have become. It's just Downy slop. You just want to see people that have impressive titles just sit here and just blah, 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 back and forth. That's all you want to see. You just want to see random, and then you can come away being like, yeah, I listened to the president of Ukraine and an American podcaster say these things. It's like, okay.
Paris, at the Élysée Palace, Macron, Merkel, Putin and I agreed on the ceasefire. The US wasn't there. And this, by the way, was a weak point of the meeting. If you'd like, we can later discuss why they weren't there. It's a security guarantee thing in general. It's Germany's position, etc. We agreed on an exchange of hostages, an all-for-all exchange. We made a deal to exchange everyone for everyone. I think you know that. And there was also a meeting that lasted many hours, a meeting where we made a deal with him. Everyone was tired. It was just the two of us in the end. And I proposed a ceasefire. By the way, no one in Ukraine believed. Few believed in the ceasefire, and he wanted troop withdrawal. I calculated that if there were a withdrawal of troops from the line of contact the way Russians proposed, it would take 20 years. I proved it to him, just in terms of time. Square kilometers, namely the length of the line of contact or delimitation line. And we agreed on what I told him, that it will not work out. But I had many points because I was deeply involved in the issue. I was involved very deeply. It's my thing in general. If I start doing something, I can't stand there like that guy I spoke about with my ass out, you know? I must be dressed. I must be prepared. I must be prepared better. Better than anyone in front of me. You do sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
I practiced for many years. And we know what fights are like, what boxing is, what Thai boxing is. This is what I did, and I loved it very much. When you step into the ring, you...
Destiny, when people have middle ground and understanding for each other, there is no, I hope that one day, I hope that when we do our civil war and shit, that your family is like being fucking put up for whatever guillotine blocking, and there's like 7 of you, and they're trying to figure out like how many of you should kill, and one side wants to kill your whole family, and you're here like, oh no, like I don't want any of my family to be killed, and some guy comes up, and they're like, the middle ground, actually, we're just going to kill 3.5 of your family members, and you're like, oh my God, bro, wow, what a middle ground. That's so peaceful. Good for you. Was it King Solomon where there were 2 women that were arguing over a child that both claimed belonged to them? And King Solomon in his wisdom was like, you know what? Let's just fucking cut this motherfucker in half, and we'll give each half to one mother, and then everybody's happy, right? Shut the fuck up about middle ground. What a stupid fucking comment. God, you're so fucking retarded. And I know you're American too, and that's what hurts even more. Because only an American can say something that fucking retarded. Holy shit. My God, the people in my country. Kill me.
You understand everything pretty much. Mm-hmm. And so I stepped into it, and I was
They shook hands after the Civil War for a reason. They shook hands after the South was crushed and then reintegrated back into the United States when the Confederate States of America was destroyed and ceased to exist. They shook hands and then, yes, reintegrated back into the United States of America proper. Correct. Yes.
definitely well prepared. But he wasn't. No. He was not deeply involved in the process. What border? Where is it? How long will it take to disengage troops? And why wasn't he involved? You want to know? Because he wasn't going to do any of this. This is what confused me. If you are not deeply involved in the issue, well then it's as if you don't really need the result. That's what I think. So what happened? We agreed that there will be gas continuation, gas transit. In 2019, we agreed with him. This was the security for Europe. Merkel asked me for it. And this was extremely important for Germany. We agreed with him. Secondly, we agreed that for him it was just money. So secondly, we agreed on an exchange. For me, this was the most important thing. For them, gas was. For me, was the people. And this is a fact.
Wow, Beanpot, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships. Does Trump understand a single thing Zelenskyy said so far? Trump doesn't understand anything. Or don't talk to me about don't bring up the fact that Trump is my president. You're not upset for 4 years. I don't need to be reminded of how fucking retarded the United States has become.
Because I wanted to have a humanitarian advantage so that there would be further meetings that would lead to sustained peace. And third, ceasefire. Ceasefire you spoke about. What happened? The gas contract was signed because he needed it. And by the way, he knew
To give a small ounce of benefit of doubt to Lex, Zelenskyy talks pretty long segments, and although seems to ask direct questions to Lex, plus, given the big delay and loss in translation, seems like it's a bit hard for Lex to jump in and have a back and forth convo without seeming to interrupt rudely. Obviously still wish Lex didn't just ask naive questions and actually dig more into the substance. Okay, I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, so it's hard for me to know how good Lex's Russian is. But if you're not, if you are fluent in a language, the way that your mind searches for words is a lot different. There's a difference between having an idea and expressing the idea versus not even being able to think in the language, but having to hear them say something in that language, translate it in your mind from the language to English, think of the idea in English, and then I don't believe that you can have a fluent conversation. You can't have a real conversation like that. You can't do it. Okay. Even in the very, very, very rudimentary Spanish that I know, when I'm listening to things and I'm hearing it in Spanish as a non-fluent speaker, when I hear, I have to try to translate it back to English, and then I have to try to translate it back to Spanish in my mind, and then speak the most basic bitch fucking present tense infinitive version of verb language that I could possibly do. There's no possible way you could have a serious, in-depth conversation involving emotion, involving different verb tense, involving higher level abstract concepts. You just can't do it, right? So in that case, don't do it in these languages. Now, I don't know, maybe Lex's Russian is good enough to do that, okay? That's one, okay? But number two, when you talk about Zelenskyy speaking a lot, okay? He's giving long answers, all right? The frustrating thing about most people that speak a lot is they say so much when they could have just said it in 1 or 2 sentences. It's not very information dense. It's just a lot of like, okay, we get it. You can fucking yap. Okay. Zelenskyy is a guy who was, among so many other things, an actor turned president of a corrupt country turned military leader in one of the most unprecedented conflicts in the past 3 decades in Europe, and has done an admirable and a commendable job in leading his country through that. And when he is speaking about things that's going on, this is like very information dense stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you could dig into here. He's not just yapping, right? So far we've gotten an interesting perspective on ceasefire talks. We had a conversation that he had with the leader of Belarus. The entire concept of how important it was to control like the flow of information. This is something that other people around the world have learned during conflict, that it is incredibly important to keep lines of information. These are all like, there's like, in terms of just what he's talked about, like in 1 hour, right? This is an incredibly dense, I'm sorry, not in 1 hour, in like 50 minutes or 45 minutes, because there was a 10-minute introduction from Lex. There's a lot of stuff that Zelensky's given here. Like, it would be interesting to hear more on any of these particular things. But the only engagement has just been peace and love and hope. And that's just very annoying, I think. Sorry. Why are the Democrats trying to break into the Capitol to prevent the election from being certified? Is it because Trump told MAGA followers that they needed to fight like hell or you'll lose your country, and then told them he would meet them at the Capitol building? No, it was because of all the pressure from Biden and his administration recently to do something about all the illegal immigration. We ended up shipping back all of our strongest Mexican warriors. So we didn't have enough illegal voters or enough Capitol stormers this time to make a change.
Everything about it. The gas contract was signed because he needed it. And by the way, he knew everything about it. As for exchange, we took the first step and exchanged the people. Regarding the ceasefire, well,
I think the silver lining is that the lack of pushback and any kind of substantive critique from Lex will help further Zelensky's cause and make more people support Ukraine. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know how much this weird, bizarro format is going to inhibit people's engagement with this. But like, this would be such a fascinating time for Lex to present like the counter arguments. Like, why didn't you guys just give in immediately, or why didn't you agree to peace, or how, and maybe they're coming, later on down the road, because there's so much misinformation. We got into a little bit of it, like that you banned Russian, didn't you? Right? I don't know, but we're only 45 minutes in. We'll see more.
Well, they started killing us in about a month. So I called him and I told him, we agree.
It would be very easy for Trump to pivot on Ukraine. Agree or disagree? Agree 1,000,000%. Trump can pivot any which way in Ukraine because nobody knows anything about it. Nobody really cares about it in the United States. And Trump doesn't know anything about it or really care about it. Trump could pivot either way, like 100%. Trump could be Ukraine's greatest ally. Trump is retarded enough that he could call fucking like a no-fly zone at U.S. airstrikes into Moscow and not even realize what the fuck he's doing. Like, it's...
Agreed on a ceasefire, didn't we? Well, it wasn't a piece of toilet paper, was it? This is serious business. Or so it seemed. It really was serious.
Not defending Lex. It is kind of just Lex's style from what I've seen. Very much open questions and letting the interviewee soapbox. Am I the only person on the entire internet who's aware of like what his audience thinks and doesn't like it when his audience thinks things that are super in contrast to what I believe? Is there a single other person on the internet that does that? I don't understand this. If I were to do a video, if I were to give a take, and like when we argue about the fucking Luigi healthcare assassinator guy or the Trump firefighter guy or whatever else, and I see where I'm saying things and then my audience is like dramatically out of step with my belief, the inclination that I have is to fight with my audience or to figure out like, well, why do we believe in different things? How many of you do I need to ban? Just kidding. Like what's going on here? I couldn't imagine having so much of my audience believe a thing that I proclaim not to believe in. So when Lex is saying things like, I believe both sides need to do peace and blah, 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 but his audience is very clearly, massively far right, far Russian captured, does that not bother him? Or does that not irritate him? Or like, how can you not, there has to be something going on there that I don't understand. I don't know.
Or was it? This is serious business. Or so it seemed. It really was serious. Merkel, Macron.
Like, you guys keep falling for this stupid shit. Lex said people believe speaking Russian is banned, didn't he? He didn't outright say he believed it was true. Yeah, but he's repeating these are the things that his audience believes. And he's probably more favorable to that than not, although I would have to see specifically if he's tweeted about this or said it. But that's a very common far right. Somebody pulled that talking point on me. Was it Owen Schroyer or was it a different debate where somebody pulled that one out? And I'm not always even sure on all of the, I hate that I don't know every single thing. God, I wish I could know every single thing. Sorry, a quick pivot. That, can you relax all the double negatives? I couldn't understand anything in the last 3 minutes. I'm sorry, I'll do this exclusively in Spanish. This fucking guy got me. Good logic on that. Did Obama ever have 3% GDP growth? And I'm like, oh God, the one figure or number or thing that I'm just not aware of. I don't know. Fuck. Did Obama ever have, did Obama ever have 3% GDP growth? I don't know. Maybe not. And I looked this up afterwards. And I'm like, wait a second. Where is Trump's massive GDP growth? What the fuck? What? Wait. This is what you're bragging about? Oh, so Obama's economy. Now I'm only going by GDP growth because that's what he wanted to bring up. This is Obama's economy. Dog shit. Absolutely fucking atrocious, horrible, destroyed economy. Trump's economy, God tier, undefeated, unbeatable, amazing. Like what? What? And the fact that he did this also, by the way, wait, 2008. Federal surplus or deficit? Why was it? Oh, I feel like this should be flipped to make more sense. Why was it that, so after we recover from the economy, okay, so these are Obama's budget deficits here. Why the fuck were the deficits increasing? Why were the deficits increasing under Donald Trump? The answer is because of the tax cuts. So we didn't get greater GDP growth. We got increasing deficits here than what Obama was running, right? Because Obama's was trending back towards, I don't know if we would have got a surplus again, but like, what was happening? Why the fuck was he spending so much? Really makes you think, doesn't it? Aloha Destiny thinks he's owning Trump here, but he's getting his data from a rando called Fred. Fred is not a rando. Fred is an incredibly intelligent researcher who's got one of the biggest Substacks of all time, dipshit, and more YouTube subs than you could ever hope to have.